Welcome to Chords and Queens, the podcast dedicated to celebrating and amplifying the extraordinary work of female composers and musicians throughout history. I'm your host, Jennifer Athen, and I created this show because these remarkable artists in their groundbreaking works deserve to be heard, studied, and celebrated. On today's episode, though, I wanted to give you 4 contemporary classical pieces that give ultimate witchcore / southern goth vibes. I'll explain more when we get into it. So, can I be honest here for a second? I've been totally consumed by the wave that is the witchy style and sort of southern gothcore that seems to be really popular right now. Think Ethel Cain, new season launch of Wednesday, and Etsy Witches. And if you don't know what an Etsy Witch is, I don't blame you, but let me educate you. The Google meaning for Etsy Witch is actually, the term Etsy Witch refers to sellers on the platform Etsy who offer spellcasting and other metaphysical services, often promising to influence various aspects of buyers' lives like love, luck, or even revenge. Now, do with that information what you wish. But as I was doom scrolling and being shown more and more farmhouses in Nebraska and listening to Ethel Cain's new album and questioning if I should dye my hair back, get a fringe, and start pleating my hair like Wednesday, I wondered, is there any classical music out there that elicits this same witchy woo style that I'm clearly so obsessed with right now? And the answer is, of course there is. So here's 4 pieces that will satisfy those spooky, southern gothic, witchy desires that you may have. And if you don't have those desires, I still recommend listening to these incredible works, okay? Now, the first piece is by Erilyn Wallen and it's called Photography 3. And it's taken from her 2002 album titled Photography. Now, this piece for me is a gentle submersion into the spookiness I will subject you to later. But first, a little short background about Erilyn. She is a Belize-born British composer, pianist, and singer-songwriter whose career spans operas, symphonies, concerts, and other multimedia works. She really is celebrated both for her fantastic talent as a composer and writer, but she's also known for breaking down a few barriers as she was the first black woman to have a work featured for the BBC Proms in 1998, as well as being appointed the Master of the King's Music in 2024. And she is generally named among the most performed living composers of our time. Now, the piece I want to talk to you about is Photography 3 and is performed by her ensemble called Ensemble X. And man, how do I describe this piece? Well, if I was staring at a blank wall and listening to this piece of music, I really think I'd have a mental breakdown, but in like the best way possible. Because this music just makes you feel everything, if that makes sense. There's so much in it, and the beauty of this piece is they have these really drones of cellos and lower strings that tend to fight with the upper strings for dominance a lot of the time, which I really, really love. Sort of pieces that love to fight each other. And it's almost as if you have like 2 pieces being fused together in a single piece and trying to figure itself out. And towards the end, the strings get really busy, and I love the broken chords that tend to come in just note by note and then all together just have this big lingering sound, and it almost just stops your heart whilst you're listening to it. Featured in her Photography orchestral collection, Photography 3 stands amongst her most performed works, which really shows its resonance and impact with the audience. The overarching album really reflects Erilyn's talent for drawing from diverse musical inspirations, like from the Baroque genre to jazz, minimalism, romanticism, and really weaving them into vivid orchestral textures. Now, you don't have to just take my word for it, but critics have also praised Photography as a fine portrait of a wide-ranging artist, noting its real bright, bold gestures and genre-blurring techniques and real emotional immediacy. It's one of my favorite pieces of hers, and for me, it's just such a perfect, spooky Halloween addition to your witchy playlist. The next piece I have for you is The Observatory by Caroline Shaw. Now, I'll be honest, I went back and forth on whether I should add this piece in or not, because I was just like, is it spooky enough? But I think it is. This piece is really bold and just makes me think of old sci-fi movies, which is definitely why I added it in. Now bear with me while I go on a tangent here, but do you know how nowadays they seem to be remaking or giving sequels to a lot of classic films? Think the relaunching of Star Wars, the new Lilo and Stitch, as well as remaking a lot of the live action Disney princess movies. Well, I often think to myself that if they ever remade 2001 A Space Odyssey, which side note, why would they? It's a perfect film already, but that's never stopped them before. But if they did, I would love Caroline Shaw to score the movie. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Anyway, I got to this conclusion after I heard The Observatory because it's quite hair-raising. And I mean, no spoilers, but 2001 A Space Odyssey is a very creepy movie. And that is what this piece makes me feel. It's just a bit unsettling. Hence, it's getting added to the witchy playlist. Now, a bit of background about Caroline while we're here, because she is indeed fabulous. She was born in Greenville, North Carolina, and her mother, a violinist and singer, introduced her to the violin at the tender age of 2. So talk about having access to music education at your fingertips. Now, growing up, she absorbed different musical influences from her local church, and I think especially the choir and its Bach playing organist. And she even practiced recording duets from the radio. And by age 10, she was already composing, inspired by the great Mozart and Brahms. And to say she's successful is an understatement, as her groundbreaking work, Partita for 8 Voices, composed between 2009 and 2012 for the innovative vocal octet Roomful of Teeth, earned her the Pulitzer Prize for Music in 2013, making her the youngest recipient ever for that honor. So she should just automatically be categorized as a legend for that alone. The piece The Observatory was completed in 2019 and is roughly between 15 to 18 minutes long, and it was an orchestral work originally commissioned by the Los Angeles Philharmonic and the Cincinnati Symphony Orchestra, and received its world premiere at the Hollywood Bowl. And it is indeed epic. So even though I may have ummed and ahed about whether it was gothic enough, I really do think it deserves to be a piece that you listen to if you want some spooky vibes in your life. But speaking of truly haunting, let's move on to Depression by Delia Derbyshire, who was born in 1937 and was a pioneering English composer and electronic music innovator, who was probably best known for her groundbreaking work at the BBC Radiophonic Workshop in the 1960s. She demonstrated an early aptitude for music and mathematics, earning a degree from none other than Cambridge University. In 1960, she joined the BBC as a trainee studio manager and soon became involved with the Radiophonic Workshop, where she created electronic music and sound for nearly 200 radio and television programs. Depression is a brief yet quite emotional electronic composition by Delia Derbyshire, and I believe a collaboration with Don Harper and Brian Hodgson. And it was created in 1972 as part of the BBC Radiophonic Workshop's KPM 1000 series, Electrosonic. This series in particular was actually designed to provide libraries of experimental sounds for use in television and radio productions. The piece Depression, you can really hear some of the iconic and experimental signature techniques at the time, like the tape machine, the oscillators, and all these different layered textural sounds used to convey a sense of emotional depth and introspection in the listener. Now, the piece has some really haunting tones and rhythmic pulses to create this sort of intense atmosphere that is both quite unsettling and contemplative. Though the piece is quite short, Depression is a great example to Delia's innovative approach to electronic music and her ability to make you feel really intense emotional responses through sound. It actually got to the point that I would listen to it late at night, but I was starting to get so creeped out by it, so I would just turn it off. For that reason alone, it definitely deserves a spot on my Etsy Witch spooky playlist. Now let's talk about Anna Thalassodier's Ubik Part 11. Now, this piece is truly one that inspired this episode because I was listening to it the other day and I just couldn't stop thinking about how this perfectly encapsulates that modern, spooky, witchy, southern gothic style aesthetic, and it perfectly underscores it all as well. I personally can see this piece being played in the background of a really emotionally dramatic and hair-raising movie. Or it would go perfectly in Star Wars as well, actually. Especially in that scene where Luke is training on Dagobah and enters that weird cave. That's literally what this piece reminds me of. Now, its composer was born in 1977 in Borgarnes, Iceland, and she actually trained as a cellist before pursuing composition at the Iceland Academy of the Arts. Furthering her studies, she earned both a master's and a PhD in composition from the University of California. And Anna has been recognized as one of Iceland's most celebrated composers and was awarded the 2012 Nordic Council Music Prize for her orchestral work Dreaming. Her music is frequently performed in Europe and the United States, often drawing inspiration from landscapes and nature. Now, this particular track belongs to a bigger body of work called Ubik, which is a 45-minute, 11-part chamber work composed for flutes, grand piano, 2 cellos, and pre-constructed electronics. Part 11 is the penultimate segment of the piece and really exemplifies Anna's approach to music as it explores the use of sound textures and atmospheres rather than traditional narrative musical storytelling. The composition really ebbs and flows, sort of sliding through different emotional shifts and incorporates really intricate timbral changes. It really destabilizes your ear and sucks you into its hypnotic, subtle changes. The piece almost lulls you into believing it has a secret to tell you, and if you listen closely enough, you might just hear it. I believe Ubik was co-commissioned by Carnegie Hall and other institutions as part of Claire Chase's Density 2036 project. My other really random thought about this piece is that, is there something quite unsettling about the number 11? Or am I just reading way too far into things now? Probably. But anyway, this composition is the pinnacle for me of spooky witch music, and I love it. I love its subtle darkness and how it really conveys to me this eerie world that we're supposed to be living in when we're listening to it. It's also just beautifully performed and scored. And that brings us to the end. Those are my 4 pieces that I hope will hex you into the world of haunting music. If you have any recommendations of your own for spooky music that I should listen to and perhaps even add to this playlist that we've got going on here, I am all ears and would love to hear it. Until then though, I will go back to doom scrolling and Ethel Cain and listening to my spooky music. Well, that's all folks, and I hope you enjoyed this journey exploring some of these different compositions. I will link them all below in case you want to check them out for yourself. And if you enjoyed this and want to know more about female composers, you can listen to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, while you're at it, make sure to give us a follow over on Instagram and TikTok, where I post lots of little stories about female composers, and you can find that at Chords and Queens. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you again soon.